So now we're going to transition to our message. Pastor Mike has a great message and our exterior renovation presentation prepared. In preparation for that, we're just going to share a video, and this is also Memorial Day weekend, so our video is a Memorial Day video, and please just take a chance to reflect and appreciate people who died for our freedom. So, and then after that, Pastor Mike will be up here.
Some time back, I received in the name of our country the bodies of 4 Marines who had died while on active duty. I said then that there is a special sadness that accompanies the death of a serviceman, for we're never quite good enough to them. Not really, we can't be, because what they gave us is beyond our powers to repay. And so when a serviceman dies, it's a tear in the fabric, a break in the whole, and all we can do is remember. It is, in a way, an odd thing to honor those who died in defense of our country, in defense of us, in wars far away. The imagination plays a trick. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise. We see them as something like the founding fathers, grave and gray-haired. But most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up 2 lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. We owe them a debt we can never repay. All we can do is remember them and what they did and why they had to be brave for us.
Good morning. Happy Memorial Day. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was I actually heard this I guess quote or excerpt when I was listening to the radio as I was driving around the other day, and I had to search all over the internet try to find it, but I thought it was really beautiful. And I know that there's a lot of different opinions about people in the military, a lot of different opinions about war. Obviously, war is never a good thing. But I do find it amazing when any person is willing to lay down their life for something that they believe in. And there have been many people in history that have laid down their lives for things that they believe in. And so today is a really, an opportunity to remember and appreciate those people. So we're continuing our series on the value of our faith and sharing it with others. And as we've mentioned before in the last several messages, we're talking about number 6 and number 7 on our vision point. Today we're going to be talking about this point, which we haven't really talked about on the other sermons, but it's the vision that we own a beautiful and modern building that serves as the hub for all of our many family and faith-based activities going on throughout the week. And I'm calling it internal beauty, internal truth and external beauty. So I've been thinking a lot about this sermon for a long time. And I had some experiences over the last couple of months that kind of intrigued me a little bit, that I think are a little bit related. One was that I went to a interreligious sharing program at a Mormon family, LDS family's home. And their home was so beautiful and so nice and so big. And I just remember feeling when I walked in, I was like, is this what it means to be a Mormon? it just made me feel like, oh, I want to learn more about who they are and what they believe and all this stuff. And, of course, I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy, You don't know anything more about these people besides the fact that they have a nice house. And I had another experience maybe about a week ago where I was at the grocery store and, just getting ready to check out. And this guy walks up behind me, and this is like the macho guy, right? He's thin, but his muscles are like bursting at the seams. There's veins popping out everywhere. And I looked at him, and I'm, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh man, that's just what I want. I want to know more about this person. But also in my mind, I'm thinking, that's crazy. I don't know anything about this person. All I know is that he's got a really nice body. And I had to really think, am I just really materialistic? Like, is that all I really care about? Nice house and a nice body. I think that it's interesting. There's two sides to this, right? On the one side, we see those kind of things. A person with a nice house, a person with a nice car, a person with a nice body, a person maybe with a nice family. We see all these things that we can see on the outside. And that's very easy to do nowadays with social media, right? And it's really easy to look at that and say, oh, I want that. But then I think that a lot of us have also felt like, oh, that doesn't even matter. Maybe that's just a sign of they're just really conceited. How could somebody spend that much time working out at the gym? There's more important things to life. We could spend that money giving to the poor or helping people in need. Why would you spend that money on a nice house, when you could be helping other people? There's kind of two sides. And a lot of times I believe that we put too much emphasis on looks and appearances and accomplishments, that we can get a little bit jaded because those things are easy to be faked. Those things don't necessarily reflect an internal prosperity, an internal happiness, a sense of fulfillment in life. A person could have all these things, could have all the things that we would like to have in our lives materially, but be very unhappy. That's sad. But interesting too to think about that. In reality, for some reason, we are kind of drawn to those things, or at least I am. Maybe you are not, but I'm drawn to accomplishment and results, these kind of things. A lot of times, if we experience those things, but then we also experience the dichotomy or like the fakeness of it, it can really jade us. It can really turn us off to those things, and we feel like it can be really painful for us to see somebody that looks like they have everything but is miserable inside, or a family that looks so nice on the outside and you respect them so much, maybe a pastor, maybe a leader of some kind, a movie star, but then they disappoint you so much with their behavior, with their actions, with maybe some of the things that are happening in their life, that we feel, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with that. And it doesn't really matter. I think that one angle to look at this from is that God created this world. And it says very clearly in the Bible that God created it as an expression of himself, or like he created us in his image. I think I have a couple verses here. Here's from Genesis. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Had to emphasize it twice, I guess. Male and female, he created them. And also, in Corinthians and John, says man is made in God's image and reflects God's glory. And Jesus said, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. I think there's something to this point, that when God created us and when God created this world, he created it to be a reflection of himself. He created it to be, in a sense, a mirror. It was a creative endeavor. It was God's creation. When we look at God's creation, when we look at our fellow human being, we can see elements of God. We can see elements of the Creator, just like you can see something about a person in the music that they create, or the art that they create, or the craftsmanship that they have. And God created us to also be like that. God created us with the ability to be creators in our own way, in our own right. God gave us the ability to build and to innovate and be creative and come up with all kinds of things out of our own desire. And I think that the most obvious and most full way that we can see that is through having kids. I think that there's no more greater way to be able to experience God's creativity and creatorship than having kids. Having kids is really interesting because even if your kids are not good looking, even if your kids aren't everything that you want them to be, but you love your kids because they reflect you. They have some essence. They look like you. They have some maybe same characteristics and behaviors. And there's no much more fulfilling thing for a parent than to watch your kids growing up and seeing how much, of your nature is reflected in them. And so just like Jesus says that he who has seen me has seen the Father, we are also in the same role. But it's not just, we're talking in this sermon series about sharing our faith and what's unique about our faith, right? And I think that sometimes we get caught up in thinking that we share our faith through our words, or that we express who we are through our words. I was reading online, you've probably heard this before, but there's some professors and stuff who say that in communication, only 7% of what people communicate is actually the words. The rest of it is all intonation, emotion, facial expressions, body language, environment, is all the other 93%. And that means that you could have somebody else up here saying the exact same words as me, but you would receive a completely different message, right? I've had that experience before. I mean, not that exact same thing, but depending on how the person is speaking and who is speaking, the relationship with that person, the message is completely different. That's conveyed. And we have to recognize that when we are in relationship with people, when we are speaking with people, when we are in living life, we're always communicating. We're always expressing who we are. Not always through words, and maybe through words, but more than words, our actions, our attitude, our lifestyle, whether we keep our promises. All these kind of things communicate a lot more to the people in our lives and to the people of this world than our words do. I think we really put way too much emphasis on the words that we speak. And when we are relating with people, we're also representing ourselves. We're representing God. We're representing our faith to the people that we are talking to. When you see me, when you're talking with me, when you're relating with me, you're not just seeing me as a person, or I'm not just seeing you as a person, but also we are reflecting our families, we're reflecting our lifestyle, we're reflecting our faith. If we believe in God, we are reflecting God, because as a believer in God, people are looking to us and to you as who is God, especially people who have doubts about whether God really exists or not. When I was young, my parents probably don't even remember this, but when I was young, we never ate out very often. So when we did eat out, it was really special. It was usually because we were traveling, like a road trip or something like that, visiting family or something like that. So one time I remember we were traveling to Illinois to visit my relatives. and we stopped at a Wendy's. Usually if we stopped anywhere, it was a Wendy's. And I don't know why, but just somehow. And so Wendy's at that time was doing some kind of they were trying some new marketing techniques, I guess, or something. And they said that they had a sign that said, "Don't throw your trash away, just leave it there on the table and someone will come and pick it up for you." Do you remember this, Dad? No? Okay, that's fine. So I'm thinking, this is great. Less work for me, getting more from my money or my parents' money. And, let's just let the employees do it. They're already paid to be here anyway. But then we're getting up to go, and my parents pick up the trays. And I'm like, wait a second, we can just leave the trays here, and they'll throw it away for us. And I don't remember the exact words, but I remember my dad saying, no, that's not what we do. This is our trash, and we're going to throw the trash is right there. We're just going to throw it away, Why make somebody else do it? And that's very interesting because, you have so many experiences in life, right? And it's funny what things you remember and what things you forget. That experience has stuck with me through the years. And even still now, whenever possible, I try to throw my trash away, even in places where they offered it. They don't want you to do that, Of course, restaurants are a little bit different because that's part of the service, but any other place. But it's interesting how that lesson kind of stuck with it. It was like a teachable moment. It's a reminder to me to always, you never know when the teachable moment is going to be for your kids, So thank you, Mom and Dad. It's a good lesson for me. I think that the greatest lesson for me was in the lesson of integrity more than anything else. There are times where we could let other people do things that we don't want to do. And also, there are times where we just want to put our best face forward and we don't want to let anybody know that we have any problems in our life or that we have any shortcomings or difficulties. And I think that especially for religious people, this can be kind of a trap because we kind of have a certain understanding of the way that we should live. God has asked us to live a certain way, follow certain commandments, and live a certain kind of life, morality and virtues and things like that. And, frankly speaking, it's hard to measure up. It's hard to measure up. And we know we're supposed to have good families. We know we're supposed to be good people and giving people and Christ-like people and all these things. But at the end of the day, we fall short many times. And we don't have the kind of family we want to have. We don't have the kind of house we want to have. We don't have the kind of, maybe we have some issues in our life or something like that. What was our muscles? Yeah. I wasn't going to say that, but sure. And it can be really easy to focus on making things look nice, but then on the inside they're not so nice. But when people get close to you in your life, eventually they will see those things. So we get stuck in a situation where we try to make things look good and prevent people from getting too close to be able to see that things aren't really as great as we want them to be. And that can be a real trap because as a religious person, as a person who believes in God, I believe that God wants us to have, internal truth and external beauty. It means that the inspiration, the value, the hope, the truth that we find, that we put into effect into our life, we need to find some way to make it a part of our inside and part of our outside, not just having one or the other. It's also not good just to have, fulfillment in my life, but not to be able to be to have the means to help other people, or to have a maybe. I'm not sure how to say that, so I'm just not going to. Oops. Okay. But we can't ignore. It can be really easy to focus on the things that look inspiring. The nice body, the nice house, the nice job, the money and things like that. It can be really hard to work on the things that are internal that are really hard to deal with. The broken relationships, the resentments, the pain, the unresolved issues growing up. These kind of things are really hard to deal with in reality. And I'm not saying that we should deal with them all at once or all at the same time, but as people of faith, we can't overlook them. We can't run from them. We can't try to do all the things that religious people do on the outside, but not deal with the things that are crushing us on the inside. And I think it's the same way with the church. Or actually, I'm going to talk about so like when we look at our body, for example, so I'm doing this 40-day challenge with Ben, right? And it's been a really good experience for me. And one of the things that I am reminded of over and over again is that if I don't take care of my health, if I don't mind the things that I eat and the things that I put into my body and the exercise I get, then maybe not right away, maybe not in a week or 2 weeks, but down the road, that will manifest itself in some way, in health problems and weight problems, different kinds of things. And eventually, the internal ends up reflecting our external. And it's the same way with a building. Actually, let me backtrack. It's the same way with a business. When I was really into reading about businesses for a while. I was into reading about what makes a good business a good business. Maybe some of you read the book Good to Great. There's a lot of really great books out there. And one of the things they tell you is that on the outside, the business might look really successful, but on the inside, if the business practices are bad, unethical, or whatever, or not responsible, eventually that will manifest itself in the business. In our families and in our lives, if our internal actions and attitude are not healthy, if our relationships are not healthy, there's a lot of blame, if there's a lot of resentment, eventually that will manifest itself in our family. In a building, if you don't take care of the plumbing, if you don't take care of the electrical work, if you don't take care of the foundation, these are all things that you don't really see, right? It's not like the facade of the building. It's not really going to affect how the building looks. But if you don't take care of those things, eventually the building will rot away from the inside. No matter how nice it looks, eventually it will rot away. But the outside will be the last thing to go. So we know that who we are on the inside is what matters the most. Even though what is on the outside, it can be so appealing. It could feel like it matters more. It can be kind of easy to get discouraged about what's on the inside. But it's a really important point because today we're talking about the external renovation, right? And one point I want to make really clear. Our church building has absolutely no value whatsoever if on the inside our community is rotting away. If we have a community that is dysfunctional or lost or disconnected. How we look as a building, it doesn't matter in that case. And so in a lot of ways, the approach that Adonia and I have had to take these last 4.5 years has been work on the inside with the hope that manifests itself on the outside. And also with the intention that we do both at the same time, but not neglecting the internal. I don't know if you remember this, but back when we first moved here, we did a survey, and many of you had so much to get off your hearts, I guess I could say. So much frustration, so much of a feeling like I joined a family, not a church. Why does our community not feel like a family? Why are we not addressing the needs that are here? And so on and so forth. A decent amount of cynicism and frustration for sure. Even in just the things that people shared with us, I'm sure there was more. So I know that for Adonia and I, that's where we really invested our effort. Our investment and our time and our energy was really trying to deal with those things. But I also believe that as time goes by and as we're able to create a healthier community, and I do believe myself personally, many people have also helped us to make this happen. Many people have also invested a lot of effort to make this happen in our community. I do believe that in 4 years, we have really come a long way. I see a much healthier community now than I did 4 years ago. And I think we all need to recognize that has happened because everybody has invested a lot. So I want to thank you all and give a round of applause. What we're talking about today comes on the foundation of that, because without that, there would be no point. And naturally, there's a lot more that needs to be done. There's needs that aren't being met. There's more that we can do. But I know that we've come a long way. And as we invested internally, we started to invest externally. You might remember the first project we did was to renovate the bathroom in the dining room. And I remember how many people felt that was an unnecessary thing to do. But many of you remember that linoleum out around the toilet was yellow, but it wasn't the color of the linoleum. I don't remember what the color of the linoleum was, but around the toilet it was yellow. And it was, for me, disgusting, but when you go to a restaurant, you can tell a lot about the restaurant by going to the bathroom. In some ways, more than the food that you eat. The bathroom is probably the most intimate place in a restaurant, right? Because you use the toilet. And, there's germs, and, the cleanliness and the niceness of a bathroom tells a lot about how much the people care about the customer's experience. Because if you go to a restaurant with a gross bathroom or a gas station or whatever, it doesn't matter how nice everything else is. It reflects on the values. It reflects on the values of the people who are running that thing, whatever it is. So, I know that the things that we've done haven't happened quickly. I know that we've talked about, we're going to do this project, and then maybe 6 months later it gets done. Like the fence is a really good example. Me and William were talking about today, like, it's so painful to see the fence half finished for like a month, But actually, if you look at all the things that have happened in the last 4 years in terms of, growing our church internally and growing our church to be more beautiful and appealing and welcoming, it's amazing, actually. Just the consistent effort. We've renovated almost every room in this church. Added the cafe, did all the bathrooms, French ministry room, Sunday school rooms, the woodworking room, the food bank room. There's been a lot done in here, and Catherine did a lot with the entryway back there. There's a lot and outside too. You're going to see some pictures of the way the church used to look, like back in 2006 and 2007 and stuff. So you can see we've come a long way from the big overgrown bushes and the trees growing into each other to what we have now. And I hope that, I know that we get used to things. It's really easy to get used to things. We come to church every week, we see things the way they are, and we just kind of get used to them and don't really notice them. But we have to look at things through the eyes of people who haven't been here yet. What's their experience going to be like? And we have to look through the eyes of the people who notice things but don't say anything about it. So I'm going to segue now into our exterior renovation presentation. I want to first of all recognize people who have really helped a lot with this. Mira and Joelle, hey, they're in the back there. They've been working with us on this project for like 2 years. Something like that, maybe even 3. It's been a long time. At one point, we almost gave up on it because it was like, maybe it doesn't really matter. But also Schuard, when he moved here from Holland, he's been helping us a lot. But with their new baby, it's been hard for him to come to church lately. But we've gone through so many different designs and and we scrap so many things, and we're like, oh, this looks good, but then later on we look at it and we're like, no, actually that looked terrible. So this is the result of all these many, many hundreds of hours of effort to come up with something that we feel is really going to be really going to help bring our church building into more alignment of integrity with who we are as a church family. And that's really what this is all about. This isn't about just making our church look fancy. This is about making our church come into alignment with our values and who we are, to represent us to the rest of the world that sees it. I've had the opportunity to welcome many people. I'm going to get to this in a minute. Just wait. I've had the opportunity to welcome many people to our church, visitors from out of state, family members, contractors, people giving us quotes for different things. And I've had the opportunity to collect a lot of feedback from people about what their first impression is when they see our church. And some of the things are that it looks like a Mexican church. That's fair. We have the Mexican church flag, or Mexican flag colors on our building. It used to be a Mexican church, so that's fair. Also, I've had people tell me that it looks closed, partly because we keep the shades down, and doors are dark, and especially in the past, there wasn't so many things on the outside that signaled, hey, come on in, and the trees were overgrown, the bushes were overgrown, so it looked like we were kind of hiding a little bit. But I take that as meaning it's not inviting. Also, people say it's bigger on the inside than I expected. So that's kind of cool to know. It means that our church on the outside looks small. Something to keep in mind. And then I've had contractors who basically told me they didn't think we could afford what they were offering. So that's fair too, right? We look kind of poor maybe. And then we had a lot of people who said they just never noticed it. Not noticeable. Like people we've had people who've driven by years and they say, oh, I've never noticed this church before. So there you go. That's fair. Good to know. So we kind of took all those things into consideration when we made this plan. And a number of other things too. So we have priorities, right? The first priority is that we want to make our building beautiful and appealing. That's the main purpose for doing what we're doing. We want it to be an inspiration to the neighborhood. We want it to be an inspiration to ourselves. We want it to be something where I feel like, I feel comfortable to bring a friend, feel comfortable to bring a family member. I love it. They'll love it too. The next one is accessibility. One of the things that we took into mind is that our church is not accessible. I remember one time a young man came in a wheelchair from the apartments over there, and me and William, we tried to lift him up because there's a ramp over here, right? And it says handicap accessible, but then once you get up the ramp, there's like a foot. There's like a step that's like this high, and there's no way anybody in a wheelchair could ever get up that step. And we tried to lift him up it, but we couldn't. The chair, the person, and just the awkwardness of it, we couldn't do it. So if in our church, God forbid, someday somebody may have to be in a wheelchair or something like that, it's going to be impossible for them to be able to get in. And we have friends, we have friends who want to come, specifically one lady in a wheelchair, and she's like, if you ever get a ramp, I'll come to your church. And we're like, okay. She thinks that we can get a ramp for that right there, but she doesn't know that right behind it is stairs. So it's just not as simple as we had hoped. But this is kind of an important thing that we're not able to provide. Maybe some of you remember Jazz's father fell down the stairs in his wheelchair like 10 years ago or something like that. So we don't want those kind of situations happening. And then lastly is safety. This neighborhood has changed a lot, but it's still not the safest neighborhood. And one of the things that we have tried to take into consideration is how do we make sure that our building is safe for children, for families, people feel comfortable to come here. And there's only so much we can do, but the police have actually helped us with this. They've actually given us ideas and suggestions how we can make our building a little bit safer. For example, putting a fence out there along the walkway, things like that. So these are things that we took into consideration when we were preparing this presentation. So This is a blast from the past. I was not alive, I guess, at this time, but I think this is when we first bought the church back in 1987. You can see this picture in our office. Thank you, Mark. And yeah, this is, maybe some of you are in this picture, yeah? But I think this is right after we first bought it, before we painted it or changed the signs or anything like that. That's what it looked like. And then I'll give you another second to look at it. And then we're going to take a big skip because I don't have a lot of pictures between 1987 and 2000. But this is a Google Street View of the church back in 2007. And it's not very clear. Here's another picture from 2011. You can see here, the tree that we took out that was growing into the other tree, and the tree that was by the sign that was dying, and the bushes that are, huge. Just, you can kind of get the feeling like it's just not well cared for, right? It's not too inviting, not too exciting looking. See here we got 2014. Of course, keep in mind there's a little bit different times of the year. 2017, you can see we took out those bushes that were there. That was a crazy endeavor. I didn't know how much work it is just to take out a couple bushes. And this is basically a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And that's what we look like now. So this is a picture I took in the winter time, and we use this as a base for our photoshopping and modeling. It's obviously winter, so just don't mind that there's trees and flowering plants. It's just that's all photoshopped in. But this is kind of what we use for the base model to just to get started. So first thing we need to do when we're looking at remodeling, at least first thing we did, was take everything away. Let's look what the base looks like. So there you go. We took away the awning, we took away the signs, we took away the stumps, took away the trees. This is kind of like the base church with the paint, right? So then the next step is we decided that instead of going with a two-tone color, we should make everything one color. So that would, isn't that amazing? The church looks bigger, right? Bigger. It's just an optical thing, right? But it looks bigger, okay? So obviously we're not keeping that color, but just so you can see, it's a little bit bigger. Next step, do something about the facade. Weird, kind of funky stair-step facade. So what we're thinking to do is to level everything off, create like a squared look. I know it doesn't look good this way. Just bear with us here. All right, next step, stucco the building. Or at the very least, if that's too expensive, we can change the color. Next step is, so these windows were really a tricky thing for us. So we kept trying to figure out what to do with these windows to make it look decent, because it looks like a pair of eyes, or a face, or like one of those old video game faces, like from the Tetris or something like that. Yeah, you notice that now, right? I live next to there. I see it every day. So we just decided there's nothing we can do with the windows the way they are. We just have to change it. So this is, here we go here. So we taking out the two little windows. The big window will become a normal size window, and then putting in 3 windows up top, either as facades or replacing the windows that are in the attic area. It looks like there's another floor there, but it's really just the attic. And then adding a thing to the top of the building to kind of add a trim kind of thing. Next step would be to change the doors. This was hard because we spent some money a few years ago refinishing them, but they're so dark, and they're already looking kind of worn again, even though we've been trying to take care of them. So we figured some nice glass doors will make it look a lot more inviting. Next step is to take out the stained glass and put in a nice open window that's really will let a lot of light in and will look more inviting. Next step will be to add some stone. It's not going to look like that. That's just bad photoshopping, so I apologize in advance. But we've already found a stone provider that that they've got reasonable prices, a nice stone. Joel and Mira and Shura, they went and they visited places that use this exact stone with the exact stucco we're looking at, and they know it looks really nice. And so, but this is like an accent. It's an accent. It doesn't change anything structurally. Nothing changes structurally with our church. But it's just all looks. This is the accent to provide a color contrast and something nice that looks really eye-catching and appealing. Then also those little pillar type things along the side here, then we'll add some stone accents to those. Next step is to add some stucco on the top and bottom of the windows on all sides, and then change the awning. And I picked a nice awning with lighting in there. Next step is to add a little different signage. So we have this extra space now up top, so we can focus, instead of having the sign on the side there where people don't see it, we can put it right on the building, right where the entrance is. Next step, yeah, it's getting better, right? Next step is to add the trees back, and then a nice metal fence. So one of the police officers told us, like, it'd be good to have a fence there. It's kind of a large drop off, and it also just it adds something to there that makes it look a little bit more contained and nicer. Then we add a retaining wall to the front there, because that slope is just, we're never going to be able to upkeep it, and it doesn't look that great. So retaining wall, mulch, landscaping, like perennials, flowers that just come back every year. We have to figure that out exactly, like how to do it in a way that looks nice. But for what it's worth, these are actual perennials in Colorado. We can add a sign. Still have to debate on whether it should be digital or just a nice professional-looking static sign. But we can add it there, and that'll be very eye-catching for people driving by. And then add some lighting along the pathway for people who are walking around. Solar panels is kind of like, oh yeah, I'd like to do that, but realistically, I have no idea like if it's worth it or what it costs or if there's benefit. But I would like to be able to do that if it could save us electricity and it would look more. David's shaking his head. I don't know. Anyway, it's just there for looks. I don't know if we'll end up doing it or not. But this is essentially the design that we are going for this side of the building, okay? So give me a second now. I'm just going to rotate around, and we're going to look at the other side. So remember I talked about accessibility, right? So the ramp that we have over here, for one thing, it's very steep, and for one thing, it doesn't work. So what we would need to do, and this isn't necessarily the way it has to be, but what we would need to do is raise up the steps a little bit, like either add another step or just tear it out and do something completely different there, and then create like a kind of a ramp with a landing that goes around, makes it easier for people to get up, and then goes right to the door. And then we would change the awning, though there's no awning there right now, but we use that entrance a lot because of the cafe, because of workshops, talks, presentations, baby showers, birthday parties. That entrance almost gets used more than our main entrance now. So there should be a nice awning there. So that's what we're looking at. Also changing the color. The thing with stucco is it's very expensive. So we don't know if we'll be able to go around the whole building, but at the very least we want to do the front, and maybe we can do the stucco later of the rest of the building, but at the very least we'd be changing the color and doing something with the window trim. Another thing is that I want to cover up those AC units out there and also move them so that they're all closer together with the downspout and the electrical stuff there. Put some nice flowers, planters, and things like that around there. Here, actually, we're talking about just converting that stairs into a ramp. So you can see here, right now the stairs go to about here, right? But there's a ways before you get to the gas pipe, which is over here. So what we're thinking we could do, because there's no way to get downstairs in a wheelchair right now, and we've looked at all kinds of options, but this is the only way that we can see that wouldn't be a drastic change, would just be and we could even make this so that there's half stairs, half ramp, or whatever, if we move it out, because there's a lot of space here. But in essence, making it so that anyone in a wheelchair or whatever can get up and down that easily. It also makes it easier for the people who refill our food bank every week, because then they don't have to carry things up and down the stairs. They can just wheel things down. It'd be a lot easier. I was thinking about ideally if we could open up that window and then you could just move things in there that way, but I felt like, oh, that's just maybe a little bit too ambitious. And this is just kind of like, some of the stuff like the coffee stand is not really a part of our plan, but it just emphasizes what we could do because of the park and everything there. And there you can see the fence extending all the way over with the lights, maybe some planters. That's just decor, like it's not going to be that way really, but you can see that this is kind of like where we're going with this side of the building. So that is, in a nutshell, the presentation. Am I forgetting anything, Joelle, you can think of? Oh, yes, sorry, timeline. So natural next questions are, so obviously now we would like to get some feedback from you. So we have some index cards in the back. If you have a comment or a suggestion or I like it, I don't like it, because of this reason or that reason, we'd love to hear from you. So there's some comment cards in the back. You can just put it in the tithing box or give it to one of us. And at the end of the day, as we actually work to develop this, we're not exactly sure how it's going to 100% turn out. That's the way it goes. But now, the next step is to go into kind of a planning, 2 months of planning. And what I mean by planning is, all right, how are we going to actually do this? So making a plan for funding is a big part of it. And then also like a timeline, like how long is it going to take? When do we want to have stuff done by? So this is kind of a basic timeline that we are looking at. It may be realistic, it may not be. But we felt like it's good to kind of figure out what needs to be done in what order and how long things will probably take. So if we follow this plan completely, we could have it done by April of 2020. We have some funds set aside because of a property that we sold back in 2000, and that money can only be used for renovations or purchases of a building. It's not a lot of money, but it's some money and it'll help. We're hoping to be able to get some help from headquarters in New York. I have no idea if they're actually going to help us, but it's worth asking. And we have a pretty good plan, so maybe they'll be inspired by that. And frankly speaking, we've done so much work just on our own, with our own manpower, with our own volunteer work, with our own money, that I hope that they can be inspired by our good stewardship. Worst case scenario? Well, maybe not worst case scenario. Next case scenario is self-fundraising. You know what that means. But I tell you what though, if we go this route, Adonia and I will be the first people to put down money to help to make this happen. But, there's different things we can do. If we're able to, It creates ownership, yeah, and that's not a bad thing. One of the things that I loved about our projects that we've done around the churches is it creates ownership. You come to the church and like, oh, I helped do that, and that's a really beautiful thing. We shouldn't feel like this is somebody else's church. This is my church, and so fundraising for it is not a bad thing. Worst case scenario is we just piecemeal it over the course of the next 5 or 10 years. We'll do one project here and one project there, and hey guys, let's get together and take out these tree stumps. All right guys, now we're gonna put the fence, and it takes 10 years, And that's really not a terrible scenario, but it's not that great either, And with the funds that we have set aside, we can probably do some of the contracted work. We can probably get a lot of that done. So that's what the planning phase is for. We need to actually figure out which of those steps we need to go towards. Or maybe it can be a combination of different things. Yes, so Alice has got there. Nothing fancy, just index cards, but yeah. Yeah, you can write, leave a comment. It goes, the wall goes, he's asking how far the wall goes. The best answer I can give you is it goes to the end of the picture. Ideally, I would like for it to go all the way around past the parsonage into the alley, but it's a little bit complicated because everything slopes, and by the time you get over there, there's like nothing. It's just like flat with the ground. So anyway, we kind of have to work on that, but that's what I would like to do. So I know that this has been long. I thank you so much for your patience. I hope that it was valuable and meaningful for you. Remember, the sermon, right, inside and outside, right? Our faith is not just something that is something inside. It has to be expressed externally. That's why we're doing this. And also, don't focus too much on the external, the nice body and the nice house, but also the internal is important too. And eventually the external will reflect the internal. Please join me in prayer. Good morning, our most beloved Heavenly Parent. Thank you for this day. Thank you for all the brothers and sisters who have come here this morning to hear your word, to hear the message, to sing songs together, to refocus our lives on you. Heavenly Parent, life gets busy, life gets complicated. We go through ups and downs. And we know that you know our situations, Heavenly Parent. I pray that as a community we can support one another in a real and honest way, that we can always strive to put you at the center of our lives. We can put you at the center of our families. We can put you at the center of our community, our church. Heavenly Parent, every decision that we make, every step that we take, Heavenly Parent, we want you to be a part of it. We want you to be involved with it, Heavenly Parent. We know that you're there in our lives whether we want it or not, but we want you to be there. We want you to be a part of it. We want to become better people. We want to grow. We want to be people that when they see you, we want to be able to say what Jesus said, that when we see him, we see the Father. We want to be able to maybe not say that, but be able to feel like when people are relating with us, that we are speaking to them and we are giving to them and we are sharing to them the way that God would want us to, the way that Jesus would have wanted us to, Heavenly Parent. We want to live a life of integrity. We want to live a life where our values are in line and our actions are in line with our values and our faith, Heavenly Parent. I pray for your blessing on all of the people here, on all of the children of this world, especially those who are in pain and who are suffering and are seeking you this morning, Heavenly Parent. I offer this prayer in all of our names. My name, Michael Donny Hendrick, God bless Central Family. Amen and adieu. Thank you very much.